Welcome to our deep dive into finding happiness.
Mm.
In a world overflowing with, well, everything.
Yeah.
You wanted to understand how to find more contentment, even with all the distractions around us.
Definitely.
To help you with that, we're taking a deep dive
Okay.
into Karuna Keaton's audio lecture, Misleading Mind.
It's fascinating how Keaton applies Buddhist psychology to everyday life. Instead of retreating to a mountaintop,
Right.
she brings these ancient wisdom teachings right into our modern world.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It feels very accessible.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Keaton talks about these things called trivial pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little confused at first because, of course, I thought of the board game.
Oh, right.
But it turns out these aren't games at all, right?
Right.
These trivial pursuits are the things we chase after,
Yeah.
thinking they'll bring us happiness,
Yeah.
but they really just end up distracting us from it.
Exactly.
Think about your own life for a second.
I-
How much time do you spend
Mm.
chasing external validation,
Oh, yeah.
material things,
Yeah.
or fleeting pleasures?
It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle,
Whoa, that hits close to home.
right?
You know, sometimes I find myself scrolling through social media
Oh, yeah.
and feeling envious of everyone's seemingly perfect lives.
I've been there.
I never really thought about it as a trivial pursuit, but I can definitely see how it fits.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of what Keaton calls
Okay.
the misleading mind at work.
Okay.
It distorts our perception of reality
Yeah.
and makes us crave things that won't actually fulfill us.
Oh, wow.
And these trivial pursuits,
Yeah.
she breaks them down into 4 main categories.
Okay, let's unpack those.
Okay.
The first one
Yeah.
is all about seeking abundance
Right.
while trying to avoid scarcity.
Yeah.
Keaton uses this striking analogy of street art
Oh, yeah.
that looks like real gold nuggets.
It's such a powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
We see those shiny things in our mind. That misleading mind
Yeah.
tells us they're the key to happiness. But of course, when we reach out, we realize it's an illusion.
That reminds me of how we often jump from one goal to the next,
Right.
always focused on what we don't have, instead of appreciating what we do have.
Yeah.
It's like we're always looking for the next gold nugget, never stopping to enjoy the ones we've already found.
It's that feeling of never having enough,
Right.
always wanting more,
Yeah.
whether it's possessions,
Right.
recognition,
Yeah.
or even just experiences.
It's true. You hear stories about lottery winners
Oh, yeah.
who end up miserable.
Right.
It's like that sudden windfall just amplifies those feelings of anxiety about potentially losing it all.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if true security
Right.
comes from external abundance or from somewhere else entirely.
And then there's the flip side.
Yeah.
You could have plenty, but
Right.
your mind is stuck in a poverty mentality, constantly fearing scarcity.
Wow.
Keaton shares a story about a friend whose mother always worries about financial ruin.
Oh.
Even though she has multiple sources of income,
Really?
it's like that feeling of never being secure,
Right.
no matter what your actual circumstances are.
Wow. So much to unpack already.
I know, right?
And we've only just scratched the surface
Yeah.
of the first trivial pursuit.
Uh-huh.
So what's the second one?
The second one revolves around pleasure,
Okay.
seeking those fleeting feel-good moments
Uh-huh.
while avoiding any discomfort. It's about how our minds get hooked on those short bursts of pleasure,
Yeah.
mistakenly believing that's where true happiness lies.
It's interesting because Keaton doesn't say pleasure itself is a bad thing.
Right.
What gets us into trouble
Yeah.
is our attachment to it, our dependence on it.
It makes me think about those guilty pleasure TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
They're fun to watch,
Uh-huh.
but if you binge watch for 3 days straight,
Yeah.
you end up feeling kind of gross, right?
Totally.
It's the same with anything.
Yeah.
Moderation is key.
Yeah, it's like those delicious meals, relaxing vacations,
Right.
or nights out with friends.
Yeah.
They can bring genuine joy.
Definitely.
But if we start needing more and more
Right.
to get that same high,
Yeah,
it can become a problem.
it can.
It's that constant chase that ultimately leads to dissatisfaction.
Exactly. And this pleasure seeking also plays out in how we evaluate everyday experiences. We're constantly filtering everything through this lens of, will this be pleasurable?
Right.
And when things don't meet our expectations,
Yeah.
we get disappointed or even frustrated.
And on the flip side, when things do bring pleasure,
Uh-huh.
we cling to the feeling
Yeah.
wanting it to last forever.
Exactly.
We're basically setting ourselves up for disappointment.
It becomes this exhausting cycle of chasing after fleeting moments of pleasure while trying to avoid any discomfort. And it keeps us stuck in that misleading mind, always looking outward for happiness instead of cultivating it from within.
Okay, so the first two trivial pursuits are about chasing abundance and chasing pleasure.
Right.
Starting to see a pattern here.
Definitely.
But they both revolve around external things.
Exactly. And the next two pursuits follow that same theme.
Cool.
They're all about seeking validation and approval from the outside world.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, is kind of the opposite of what Buddhism teaches.
Right.
It's about finding that inner peace and contentment rather than relying on external sources for validation.
So how do these last two pursuits play into that?
Well, let's dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. So we're diving deeper into these trivial pursuits that, as you've explained, aren't so trivial after all.
Right.
They really tap into some fundamental ways.
Yeah.
We try to find happiness, but often end up more frustrated. And the next two pursuits are all about that external validation.
Right? That's right. The third pursuit is about chasing praise and compliments.
Okay.
While doing whatever we can to avoid criticism or blame. You know, it's that feeling of needing to be seen as good or successful in the eyes of others.
Which is so relatable.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, who hasn't felt that pressure to perform, to live up to certain expectations?
Exactly.
Kaiten even shares a personal story about how back in high school, she started cheating on tests.
Oh, wow.
Just to avoid her mom's disapproval.
It's a great example of how deeply we can internalize that need for external validation, even if it means compromising our own values.
Right.
And think about how much energy we waste trying to avoid any kind of negative judgment.
It's a lot.
It can be exhausting.
Totally.
Yeah.
You find yourself fishing for compliments or getting defensive when someone criticizes your work. It's like you're constantly seeking approval from the outside world instead of trusting your own inner compass.
And it can be really subtle, too.
Oh, really?
Like, do you ever find yourself downplaying your accomplishments or apologizing for your opinions? That can be a sign that you're seeking validation by trying not to stand out too much.
Wow. I hadn't even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
It does.
So much of how we interact with others is shaped by this desire for approval.
It is.
Okay. So that's pursuit number 3.
Right.
Seeking praise and avoiding blame. What about the final one?
This last one is closely tied to the third.
Okay.
It's about pursuing a good reputation and prominence while shying away from disgrace or dishonor.
Right.
It's like the ultimate form of external validation, right?
Yeah.
We build this image of ourselves that we want to present to the world.
I love the anecdote Kaiten shares about her spiritual mentor.
Oh, yeah.
Lama Rebjam. He was invited to receive a prestigious academic degree.
Wow.
And basically said, why do I need another name? I already have 2 good ones.
That story just blew me away.
I know.
It speaks volumes about his detachment from needing external validation.
It does.
He wasn't interested in titles or accolades. His focus was on internal growth and development.
Right.
And let's be honest, that's the opposite of what our misleading mind wants us to do.
It is.
Yeah.
Our minds are constantly whispering, get more recognition, climb higher up the ladder, make sure everyone knows how great you are.
It's tough to resist that sometimes.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a constant struggle to quiet those voices and focus on what truly matters.
So we've explored these 4 trivial pursuits that, in essence, keep us distracted and dissatisfied.
Yeah.
But what's at the root of all this? What's causing us to chase after these illusions in the first place?
As we touched on earlier, Kaiten calls it the misleading mind. It's like this underlying operating system that distorts our perception of reality.
Right.
It makes us believe that those external things will bring lasting happiness.
It's like our minds are constantly creating these mirages. We think, if only I had that promotion, that perfect relationship, that amount of money in the bank, then I'd be happy.
It's the classic if only trap.
It is.
Yeah.
But the problem is, even when we achieve those things, the happiness is usually fleeting.
And that's because true happiness doesn't come from external things.
Exactly.
It comes from within.
It does.
I know that might sound cliche.
Yeah.
But Caton really drives this point home with her teachings.
She does, but it's not about ignoring those external desires altogether.
Okay.
It's about changing our relationship to them. It's about recognizing them as fleeting and understanding that true fulfillment comes from cultivating inner peace and wisdom.
Right. And the way we do that is through mind training.
Right, mind training.
Yeah.
But when I hear that phrase, I immediately picture monks meditating in a cave.
I know, right?
For years on end.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel very accessible.
Right.
For regular people like me.
That's a common misconception.
Oh, okay.
Mind training isn't about emptying your mind.
Right.
Or becoming some kind of emotionless robot. It's about developing something called informed awareness.
Informed awareness. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
It sounds pretty complex.
It's actually simpler than it sounds.
Okay.
Informed awareness is about learning to recognize those misleading thoughts as they pop up.
Okay.
Think of it like hitting the pause button on autopilot. It's that ability to observe your mind's tendencies without judgment.
Yeah.
And then choose a more conscious response.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah.
So, for example, instead of automatically getting angry, when you find the milk left out on the counter, oh, yeah.
You take a breath and choose a calmer approach.
Right.
You're not suppressing the annoyance, but you're not letting it control you either.
Exactly. Informed awareness allows you to create space between your thoughts and your actions. And that space gives you the power to choose how you want to respond, rather than just reacting on autopilot.
So instead of blindly following the dictates of our misleading mind, we can start to question those thoughts and make more conscious choices.
Yeah.
It's like we're taking back control of our minds.
Exactly. And that's where the real transformation begins. Caton provides some very practical advice on how to apply this informed awareness to those 4 trivial pursuits we discussed earlier.
Okay, so how does that work?
Yeah.
How can we use informed awareness to break free from those patterns of seeking external validation and clinging to fleeting pleasures?
It starts with understanding that it's not about denying ourselves those things altogether. It's about changing our relationship to them.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that those external things can be part of a fulfilling life, but they're not the source of true happiness.
So it's not about becoming a minimalist.
No.
And giving up all our possessions or avoiding all pleasurable experiences.
Exactly.
It's more about shifting our focus.
Exactly. It's about moving from an outer-directed pursuit of happiness to an inner-directed one. And a key part of this process is cultivating compassion.
Compassion. How does that tie into all of this?
Well, compassion is all about recognizing the shared humanity in ourselves and others. It's about understanding that we all have these misleading minds that lead us astray sometimes.
And instead of blaming ourselves or others for those missteps, we can approach each other with kindness and understanding.
Right. It's like that saying, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about.
I love that quote.
Yeah.
Compassion allows us to see beyond the surface and connect with the heart of another person's experience.
And this ties into a really powerful anecdote from Caton's lecture.
Okay.
The milk-out example.
The milk-out example.
It's about how even small annoyances can reveal our tendency towards blame and judgment.
That makes sense.
Think about your own milk-out situation.
Okay.
What are those little things that trigger those big reactions in you?
Oh, man, there are so many.
I bet.
Like when I'm running late and can't find my keys.
Oh, yeah.
Or when someone cuts me off in traffic. It's like my mind instantly goes to blame and frustration.
We all have those moments.
Yeah.
But Caton's point is that we can use those moments as opportunities for practice. Instead of asking who made the mistake, we can ask, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective.
It takes us out of that blame game, right?
It does.
It allows us to approach the situation with more curiosity and ultimately more compassion.
Exactly. And Caton also highlights the importance of acknowledging our own internal reactions as the real source of suffering.
Instead of pointing the finger outward, we start looking inward and taking responsibility for our own thoughts and feelings. It's like we're saying, okay, I'm feeling angry right now. Why is this happening? What can I learn about myself from this reaction?
It's about cultivating self-awareness, but also self-compassion. We're all works in progress.
Right.
And it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
What matters is that we're learning from them and growing.
And this self-compassion extends to others, too.
It does.
It's about recognizing that everyone's mind is shaped by their own unique experiences.
Right.
And we're all capable of getting caught in those misleading thought patterns.
Which is why Caton is so vehemently against blame in general. She argues that when we cling to the idea that our perspective is inherently right, we create separation between ourselves and others, and that's where conflict and judgment arise.
It's like we're putting up walls instead of building bridges.
It is.
And that lack of understanding and empathy ultimately leads to more suffering.
Exactly. So Caton challenges us to reflect on times when we've been blamed unfairly. Remember how that felt?
Yeah.
Now think about a time when you blamed someone else. What if you were looking at the situation through the lens of their misleading mind?
Wow, that's a powerful question.
Yeah.
It forces us to step outside our own perspective and consider the other person's experience.
Right.
It's a reminder that we never truly know what someone else is going through.
And that's where compassion arises.
Oh.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected and that everyone is doing the best they can with the tools they have.
Okay, so we've covered the problem.
Yeah.
Those 4 trivial pursuits that keep us chasing after external things.
Right.
We've explored the cause, that misleading mind that distorts our perception of reality. And we've discussed the solution, cultivating informed awareness and choosing a more conscious response.
Exactly.
But how do we actually do that?
That's a great question.
How do we put all this into practice?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive into Karuna Caton's teachings.
So we've explored the problem and the cause of our relentless pursuit of things that don't ultimately bring us happiness. And we've learned that the solution lies in cultivating something called informed awareness. But how do we take all of this amazing insight?
Yeah, that's the key question, isn't it?
It is.
How do we actually apply this to our lives?
Right.
Well, Caton's closing message is all about embracing the role of the lifelong learner. She emphasizes that overcoming the misleading mind isn't about reaching a final destination. It's an ongoing journey of self-discovery.
So it's about always staying curious and open to new perspectives. Being willing to question our assumptions. And challenging those ingrained thought patterns that keep us stuck.
It's like we're training our minds to become more flexible and adaptable.
That makes sense.
Instead of clinging to rigid beliefs and expectations, we learn to flow with the ever-changing nature of life.
If we're constantly trying to control everything and make it fit into our preconceived notions of how things should be, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment.
And a lot of unnecessary suffering. Caton reminds us that challenges and setbacks are inevitable parts of life.
That's true.
But they don't have to derail us. In fact, they can be valuable opportunities.
For growth and learning.
Right.
If we approach them with the right mindset.
It's like that idea of post-traumatic growth. Sometimes it's those difficult experiences that force us to reevaluate our priorities and discover hidden strengths we didn't even know we had.
Exactly. So instead of getting caught up in blame, frustration, or self-criticism when things go wrong, we can use those moments to practice informed awareness. We can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to grow?
And Caton leaves us with a beautiful reminder. Something I think we all need to hear. Happiness isn't about getting rid of problems. It's about transforming our relationship to them.
It's about learning to dance with the challenges of life.
I like that.
Rather than resisting them.
And that's where this deep dive into Karuna Caton's teachings comes in.
Exactly.
It's given us a taste of her wisdom.
A starting point for our own journey of self-discovery.
It has. But it's just the beginning, right?
It is.
The real work happens when we take these ideas and start applying them to our everyday lives.
So I want to leave our listeners with a few questions to reflect on.
Okay, sounds good.
Think back to those 4 trivial pursuits. Where do you see those tendencies showing up in your own life?
Big question.
How much time and energy do you spend chasing external validation, material things, or fleeting pleasures?
It's easy to get caught up in that.
It is.
Yeah.
And more importantly,
Yeah.
how can you start cultivating that informed awareness?
Right.
To break free from those patterns.
That's the key.
It is. What small steps can you take today to shift your focus from an outer-directed pursuit of happiness to an inner-directed one?
Remember, this isn't about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment.
Right.
It's about recognizing those misleading thoughts as they arise and gently guiding your mind back to a place of clarity and compassion.
And don't forget to be kind to yourself throughout this process.
Yeah, that's important.
It's not about self-judgment. It's about self-discovery.
Exactly.
And that's a journey worth taking.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into taming the misleading mind.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and maybe even a little bit challenging.
Sometimes the best lessons are.
They are. And remember, you don't need to wait for another deep dive.
Right.
To keep exploring these ideas.
The journey continues.
It does. The journey to greater happiness and contentment is happening right here, right now.
So keep practicing, keep learning, and keep growing.
And who knows, maybe you'll bring your own material for us to explore.
Yeah, we'd love that.
In a future deep dive.
That would be great.
Until then, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Awesome.